right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Melissa. I believe I've said it before, and it bears saying again. Melissa makes this very easy. She will be minding the chat so that I can singularly focus on the content that we have to present today. I have to say, as all of you all are coming in, I get a big smile on my face seeing your names in the participants list. I wish dearly that we were all in the same room together so that we could see each other, but it's wonderful that you chose to spend a little time this morning with us here in the division to learn about all the things that are going on. Hello and welcome and good morning, good Thursday morning to you. It's bright and crisp and very cold in Tallahassee this morning, so I hope you too are feeling a little winter perhaps in your area, and that you're enjoying this sort of mid to deep December time frame. So without ado, we will go ahead and get started. Thank you, Melissa, again for your help. Welcome. Yeah, there I am. I'm glad to be with you this morning as the Division Director and State Librarian for Florida, and we'll dive straight into the content. We are going to be doing an update for the Division of Library and Information Services today. Again, this is just so you're aware, a part of the Department of State. I try to start each one of our sessions with giving you sort of a snapshot of what's going on here within the division. So what I've got here on the slide for you is just showing you that we are actively recruiting for folks who might like to work with us here in the Division of Library and Information Services. We do have a number of vacancies at this time. All of the vacancies are in some process of being posted and being advertised. So you will see more information on Florida Library Jobs, some other information about this in other places. These numbers, I should say, are as of the end of November, and the other piece there about OPS or other personnel services as it relates to state verbiage, those are considered to be temporary positions. Some of the division's OPS positions are full-time, but temporary full-time. The majority of those 21 positions are part-time positions. So we do have one part-time OPS vacancy right now. And I suppose as we're getting started here, and if you all have questions, please don't hesitate to raise your hand or type something into chat because I would love to answer any questions that you might have about any of the content I'm talking about today or anything else for that matter. Here's a reminder about our upcoming legislative sessions. We have sort of changed the pattern slightly based on some legislation that has passed. So in the even years, we will be having a legislative session January through March. And in the odd years, constitutionally, we have to remain at what is a little bit more traditional historically for Florida, the March through May. So we have just finished our 6th and final committee week in preparation for legislative session that will start pretty early in January for the 2020 timeframe. So it's just a reminder as we're moving forward when you can expect to have elected officials here in Tallahassee working on the state budget as well as other important legislation. So we have lots more coming up about legislative session. The next slide is just meant to give you a snapshot. If you look at the slide, we're sort of right below right to the left of the bottom center point. The governor has already submitted his budget recommendations since those are due 30 days before session. Those budget recommendations came out actually in late November. So the governor's budget recommendations are out. Because the Department of State is a governor's agency, our budget was released when the governor released his budget. Just let me give you a slight backfill, I guess, a little bit of information. The Department of State develops a budget which gets released in the fall. And then the governor comes out with the governor's budget. And so at that point, then the Department of State budget is superseded by the governor's proposed budget for the Department of State, and that is indeed out and available for folks to see. So, and you can see there how we sort of will head into this early session time, immediately following the holidays. Folks will come back to Tallahassee and have some time with us in the proper 60-day legislative session going from early-ish January through early-ish March. So that's sort of where we are in the budget cycle. I do want to give you an update for the Friends of the State Library and Archives of Florida. We had a very successful meeting at the end of November. This is the Division Citizen Support Organization. So they met with us immediately following directors meeting. Their next meeting, the Friends' next meeting, is in January 2020. They'll be back here in Tallahassee January 22nd and 23rd. For the next meeting. At this point, the Friends have been sort of, if you will, reconstituted, reinvigorated, reappointed as of December 2018. So they've now been meeting for the better part of a year, almost exactly a year at this point. And they've been working on developing a long-range plan for their support of the division. So I do see that the question there. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Cresta. The question, just so in case somebody's in only by phone, the question is asking me to give a brief overview of what's recommended for libraries and the MLCs, the multi-type library cooperatives, in the governor's budget. So the recommendation that we have for state aid, and I'm just flipping to my notes here, the governor's recommended state aid amount is $21,468,993. Again, $21,468,993. That is what is in the governor's recommended budget. That is indeed the amount that the Department of State had in our initial budget. That basically $21.5 million. If you look in the governor's budget, you will not see a recommendation. This would be true in the Department of State budget as well, but now we really need to focus on the governor's budget. You will not see a recommendation for the multi-type library cooperatives because that is $2 million of recurring funds. So the $2 million does not show up in the Department of State budget. It does show up, the recurring and the non-recurring show up in the governor's budget. So that's $2 million. That is what is allowed in law, and so that is what is recommended for the multi-type library cooperatives is the $2 million. The request for construction always goes in as a separate amount. It does not get included into the Department of State budget nor in the governor's budget. So those are the amounts. The state aid amounts, what round terms is $21.5 million. And then $2 million for the multi-type library cooperatives. That's what's currently in the governor's budget. Of course, and I will hit this again in a few minutes. The library community needs your help. Everyone who's on today, as well as folks who aren't on today, in helping during legislative session to tell the story about the importance of library programs, the importance of these funding, so that we can increase the amount that is, because any of these amounts can be increased to a higher level in the multi-type library cooperative grant funding. We saw that as evidenced last year for the first time. We know that can happen in state aid as well as in other places, and certainly very important to start working on support for public library construction grant funding, especially if you have a project on the list. But Cresta, I hope that answers your question. Those are what are recommended in the governor's budget. And I certainly could send a link out to the governor's budget later if you want to email me and remind me that you would like for me to do that. All right, so we'll move on. Thank you for that question. Sorry, I do want to give everyone an update on the statewide resource sharing platform. Many of you have heard me talking about this for quite a bit of time, and I talked about it a little bit when we were together. Some of us were together for a public library directors meeting. We are in the process of negotiating with one vendor. I'm so excited. I mean, I'm so excited. It's hard for me to even be able to tell you, that we are negotiating with a single vendor to be able to provide the statewide resource sharing platform. At this point, I can't divulge the vendor's name. I think you'll all be very pleased. I know I'm extremely pleased. We are working on contract details as well as other details for the project. It does certainly, we won't have a signed contract until early next calendar year. And we do understand that it may take 3 months to sort of ramp up and start onboarding interested libraries. So just stay tuned with us about that. We're really excited. And just as a quick overview, the idea behind the statewide resource sharing platform, any library of any type in Florida that would like to participate will be more than welcome to participate. The state is paying the platform fee, and we, of course, help support the DILI program, which is the courier program. And so this particular statewide resource sharing platform would be available for any library of any type to use if they would like to participate in statewide resource sharing. So more information coming about that. Did want to also remind you about our referral ILL program. So for right now, when we're sort of in this period after the support of FirstSearch, the state no longer supports FirstSearch, and we don't yet have the statewide resource sharing platform in place. We have instigated a referral ILL program. So you see some information on the screen about that. If you would like to be part of the referral ILL program, I would invite you to submit the application. We have a number of libraries that are working with us on this program, and it is working quite well. So we would invite you to also be part of it if you would like to. This is really designed for folks who no longer have access to an automated interlibrary loan system. So if that's you, we would love to have you join us if you're not already part of the statewide referral program. So sort of circling back a little bit to some upcoming events where we need your help, you and all of your friends at your libraries and all the folks that work collectively with you all across the state. Number of events coming up in 2020. Early in the year, Wednesday, January 22nd, we have Florida Library Legislative Day that is hosted by the Florida Library Association. That's a perfect day for folks to come to Tallahassee and tell the story about the importance of the programs. So thinking in support of the Department of State's budget initiatives, as well as other legislation that is currently being heard during the legislative committee weeks. So House Bill 3885, which has to do with Career Online High School and having that program funded by the state funds for any public library that would like to participate. That's currently being heard. That has gone through, successfully gone through the committee week, and will be continuing. That bill will continue to move during legislative session. So Library Day is a great time to let your elected officials know about the importance of Career Online High School, construction funds, anything around support for libraries. The Florida Library Association does have their legislative platform available on their webpage, so you certainly could look at the issues that the Florida Library Association Board has put forward as top priorities. But I would, again, one more pitch for you coming to Tallahassee in early January. Well, actually, it's not early, January 22nd, the third week of January, to show your support for library programs and library funding. Then in early May, there is National Library Legislative Day. That's May 4th through 5th. That's in Washington, D.C. That's sort of that federal library day. Florida needs a good, strong contingent of folks to be in the capital, the nation's capital, at that time to show support for federal support for libraries. So if you're interested at all or can attend National Library Legislative Day, that registration is opened as of yesterday, according to an email I got. So you can go to the American Library Association webpage and find out more information about National Library Legislative Day. Again, I'd love to have a very strong contingent in Washington, D.C. in early May. The Florida delegation, if you will, the folks who will go from Florida, will be coordinated by Lisa O'Donnell from the Florida Library Association. And obviously, I will support, and the division will provide plenty of printed information and support for folks who are attending National Library Legislative Day. So please consider going to Washington, D.C. In early May, of course, after you've come to Tallahassee in the third week of January. And then I wanted to also plug, of course, the Florida Library Association conference in May 2020. So looking forward to that in sort of that early mid part of May. May 12th is the pre-conference day and following the rest of that week. So looking forward to being together in Orlando for the Florida Library Association conference. So let's talk about some upcoming grant deadlines. So I was thinking about 2020, although I have to say I'm still having trouble saying 2020. That's I suppose I'll get used to that hopefully before too long. We do have some upcoming grant deadlines, things that you're used to hearing about, certainly if you've been in the state for a while. I thought it was interesting to have a money tree here that I found on Florida Memory, an image of a money tree. That was kind of a cool image that I found there for our upcoming grant deadlines. In March 2020, the Federal Library Services and Technology Act grant applications will be due. There's more information about that on our webpage. In April 2020, the Public Library Construction grant applications will be due. In June 2020, the Library Cooperative grant applications will be due, and then following deeper in the year, October 2020, the State Aid to Libraries applications will be due. Certainly plenty more information on our webpage and plenty of staff that can answer any questions you might have about any of those particular grant applications. Certainly the first one coming up, the LSTA, or the Library Services and Technology Act grant program, which will be due in March. So moving on and thinking about Career Online High School, which is a program that's had great support and great use in public libraries. We have, it's so exciting, we have over 680 graduates from Florida Public Libraries, over 680 graduates. We still have 425 students continuing in this program, even though we don't have any state support as of July 1, 2019. The program still goes relatively strong with students that came into the program right in sort of May 2019 and forward. There are a few public libraries that have continued to be able to buy scholarships directly, and so they are continuing to have new students come into the program. I would imagine, much like happens to you, I get at least one email a week from a student from somewhere in Florida, I don't always know where, reaching out to me saying, I really need this program. And I, of course, answer every single one of those emails and always tell them that I indeed hope that we will have funding again as of July 1, 2020. And again, we all need to be watching House Bill 3885, as I mentioned earlier, as it moves through the legislative session. At this point, it's looking strong and good. Of course, it's early days, having only just been through the legislative committee weeks. Certainly, we have graduations going on all the time throughout the state for these 680 folks who have graduated. So it's quite exciting to get pictures and to know about how things are progressing. And I see there that my friend Matthew has chimed in that Career Online High School is wonderful. It truly changes lives. Fingers crossed about the funding. I'm right there with you, Matthew. And if I could, again, prevail upon anybody who can, more than just fingers crossed, let your fingers do the dialing or the emailing or the coming to Tallahassee to tell the story about the importance of this program to your elected officials as this bill continues to move through the process for funding. The thing that's different for the 2021 year for the bill that's been filed, and again, it's House Bill 3885, if you want to follow that. I hope you're aware that through our online Sunshine, you can track a bill. You go in and make a profile, as you do on most websites these days, and then you can say which bills you want to track, and that way you can see as it moves through committees and how it's ultimately voted on, and you can get some other information about how it's progressing. The bill, the difference this year, and what I was trying to tell you, is that the 3885 does name that the appropriation be for the Department of State and administered by the Department of State. In the 3 years we've had the program, the appropriation has been with the Department of Education. And so that while that has worked very well, I do think there will be some added potential advantage to having the dollars come to the Department of State and not having the Department of Education piece in the legislation or in the contract. But anyway, thank you, Matthew, for your great comment, and I too have things crossed related to knowing that we will get some funding for 2021. And thank you for your great support and Orange County's great support for the program. I know you all have a graduation coming up in May, which is very, very exciting. So I did want to let you know, we were talking about grants a few minutes ago. You can tell sometimes my slides aren't always in the most logical order. For that, I apologize. But I will let you know that we have a couple of rule revisions ongoing, and I think that I probably have this slide in my deck almost every time, because I almost always have a rule revision going on, and that is true. We have done the notice of rule development for both 1B 24.003 and 1B 2.011. The good news is that we should see very soon the actual notice of rule development, which will give you the actual language of the rule around library grant programs. That should come out very soon. And there we're doing some changes, which I believe I've spoken about in the past, related to our grant programs. So for instance, I'll hit a couple of highlights. In the Federal Library Services and Technology Act grant program, we have opened up the eligibility requirements so that the Florida Library Association, as well as some other associations, are indeed explicitly eligible for federal funding. So that's one thing that has changed in our Federal Library Services and Technology Act grant program. Another change that we are making, or in the process of making, because honestly, this rule notice is just alerting the world that we're making these changes. There are plenty of times still yet where you all can provide feedback related to the changes that we are proposing. So all of this is just proposed and not yet done. But the proposal for a change to the state aid to libraries grant program will have a provision related to emergency and damage, thinking back to Hurricane Michael and sort of trying to figure out how, as a community, we could hold harmless, if needed, any library system that gets really significantly impacted, or their budget significantly impacted, based on some sort of disaster declaration. So we have some language proposed in the state aid to libraries grant application that will be coming through as part of this rule change for library grant programs. So stay tuned. Please let me know if you've got some individual questions about that. Happy to provide any information to you outside of this webinar as it relates to either of these rule revisions. I should tell you that the rule revisions for the on the records retention and scheduling and disposition, those are the same ones that we've been working on. Those take a little bit longer to get all of our information together. So that was public utilities. There are 3 of them specifically we're working on. And of course, right now I'm drawing a blank. So if Beth is online and can pull that information, or Brenda, she can type it into chat. But I've talked about the 3 that we're working on specifically right now in the 1B-24.003. I suppose even though I can't remember with specificity the 3 rules, retention schedules that we're working on in the 1B-24. If you look at my last line there, again, flrules.org, you can go in, set up a profile, and you can tell the system which rules you're interested in knowing as soon as we make any change at all or announce that we're going to make a change. It's another website that has a great custom feature where you can indicate where your interests are so that you'll always be, if you will, in the know as the rules are being revised. So I would invite you to do that at flrules.org. So we'll move forward. Always thinking about partnerships with the division, and so we continue to develop and mature our partnerships. Just off the top of my head, very recently, I've got some strong work together with Florida State University, as well as Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, and of course, as always, with our Florida Library Association, with the Florida Academic Library Services Cooperative, and certainly several other organizations across the state. So lots of opportunity for partnerships. We continue to enjoy working collectively with folks. So thank you, let's see, Beth or Brenda, whoever came to my rescue there, Beth. Thank you, Beth. So we are making some changes to the GS4, which is health and medical, the GS8 for fire departments, GS14, public utilities, that was the one I could remember. And according to this, the GS1SL, which is the state and local agencies, which may be the one that you use perhaps almost as frequently as the library rule schedule. Suppose I should, now that Beth has given me that, thank you for Mrs. Lund, that's fine, that please know that if you have any questions about records retention or the record schedules themselves, we certainly have folks within the division who are experts. And so if you send me a quick email, I can get you in touch with Beth and her team who can help provide any information you might need. So that's that. And thank you, Beth, yet once again to the rescue with our email address there, recmgt@dos.myflorida.com. Thank you, Beth, for that, all of that great rescue. Sorry, folks, I've been in training the last 2 days, so I was here this morning, but did not sort of dive back into the slides and think about all the things I should bring with me. So thank you for plenty of staff and sort of coming to the rescue when I can't remember all the exact particulars. So I'm here highlighting Florida Memory and our 2 great shots from our Bruce Mozart collection. So 2 exciting things to sort of give you information about, and one updating and one perhaps some new information. So for those of you who have been waiting with great anticipation for our Florida Memory calendar, which I told you last time features our Florida Springs work and images of our Florida Springs, we anticipate taking delivery of the calendars almost any minute, not quite any minute, but almost any minute, certainly this week, and if not this week, by early next week. And as soon as they arrive here, the 31,000 calendars arrive here at our building, we will be mailing them out to all of you. So I know that you wait with great anticipation. We get a number of calls a week about this with folks looking for calendars, and we're glad that people are eagerly awaiting our calendar, and so they are coming as soon as possible. The other thing I want to let you know about the Bruce Mozart collection is that we will be having a gallery opening on the evening of January 9th. That is a Thursday, January 9th, 2020. And if you happen to be in the Tallahassee area, or if you just want to come to Tallahassee on that beautiful day in January, we would love to have you come to our gallery opening, our exhibit opening for our Bruce Mozart collection. So that'll be here in this building on January 9th. So stay tuned for more information about that.
We've got a question. Matthew David says, not sure if we requested any. Is it too late to ask for some calendars?
I will double check, Matthew, but I'm pretty sure we've got some headed to Orange County Library System, but I will double check on that. pretty sure that's already on the list. So it's never too late to ask, but I will verify and get back in touch with you to make sure. But I'm as positive as I can be that we have public libraries already on the distribution list. So, but I will verify that after the webinar today. So thank you for asking the question. So just a reminder about our table of contents service. This has been a service that's been greatly used and appreciated. We do allow folks to sign up for and indicate to us which journals they would like to get the table of contents from, and we send that out to you as soon as a new version of the journal or magazine comes out. And then you can tell us which articles from that journal or periodical, good library word there, that you might like to receive. So if you're not aware of our table of contents service, if you want to check it out, there is the link so that you can sign up for the table of contents service. I'll also remind you about our professional resources. We do indeed buy resources with the library profession in mind. You can see kind of at the very top there of the image you see under our professional e-resources, we do have library and information science source, so we do have that available. Any staff member of a public library, public school, or public academic library can get a state library card to have access to the library literature database and our collection of professional ebooks. So again, if you're not aware of this, always want to make sure and remind you that we have resources that you may take advantage of between your workplace and Tallahassee. So moving on, reminding you about all of our continuing education opportunities. Certainly there are loads of wonderful opportunities from between the division as well as in partnership with our multi-type library cooperatives, as well as with the Florida Library Association. We talked some about the FLA conference and other things that are upcoming, but I always want to remind you about the opportunity for continuing education. One new course, maybe a class that we're offering. I've talked about it before, but did want to bring it to your attention. We do have a brand new offering called Managing Archives and Historical Managing Archives and Historical Records. We are offering that, and we will next be offering that workshop at Florida Gateway College in Lake City. That's going to be on February 20th, and so if you are somewhere in the Lake City area and would like to attend our Managing Archives and Historical Records workshop, we would love to have to know that you would like to come. There'll be more information sent out about registration, that sort of thing, if you want to attend that workshop. Also, if you'd be interested in us providing that information to you or in your area, please let us know, and we will work on getting this workshop offered in your neck of the woods as such, because Florida is a big state. We all know that, and there are miles and miles and miles of roads between us, and so we would like to offer it at a place that's convenient for you if Lake City is not convenient. So always a reminder about our continuing education opportunities. I want to let you know about our course, all of our social media and the ways that you can stay connected with us and stay in the know. I also want to highlight at this point our fabulous newsletters. We have a number of newsletters from the division, everything from our Florida Memory newsletter to the state publications newsletter to our youth services newsletter. So if you're not signed up already for our newsletters, again, please holler at me, let me know so I can get you connected with those newsletters. All of our newsletters are archived and available through the state library, any old issues, as well as any of the new issues on our webpage as well. So happy to connect with you through social media or through newsletters. With that, I'll let you know that our next update is on March 24th. Wow, how hard to believe that's in 3 months from now, but we have already set that date. And we'll be sending out information about the update at that point. Of course, at that point, we're going to be Session will be over, so we'll know something about how we ended session. I would hazard to guess and imagine that we will not have a signed budget by March 24th, but we should know how we've ended up, just waiting on the governor's signature and approval on the budget by the time we get to March 24th.
And Beth says that Orange County is definitely on the distribution list for Florida memory count.
Oh, good. Thank you, Beth. Thank you. So, Matthew, there's your answer. Well, definitely, you've got some. Already have an envelope with the library system's name on it. All I need is the calendars to enter the building, so I can get the calendars in the envelope to get them to you all. So that's good news. Thank you again, Beth, for that information. So we're really at the end of the presentation. And so are there any other questions? There we go. There's my question mark. It was there somewhere. Any other questions from anyone? You're welcome to unmute yourself so that we can hear your voice, or you can type through chat.
And Matthew says, perfect. It's great to hear. It's popular around here, the calendars meeting.
Yes.
And thanks to Charles for letting us know that he's got extra people on with him. If you have extra people sitting with you, if you could let us know for our statistics, that would be great. You can just type that into chat and let us know. Otherwise, if you have questions for Amy, you can either type it into chat, as she said, or click the hand raise button and we'll get you unmuted.
And I guess while you're thinking about your questions, I will tell you that I don't have any more content to present today. So I can also gift you back 20 minutes if you are ready to be early to whatever is your noon opportunity. Wonderful. Thank you, Cresta, for that information. That's great. Happy holidays to everybody as well. Thank you. Thank you for being here today. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being present today. I hope everyone has wonderful holidays and enjoys this season with family and friends. And if there are no other questions, we will go ahead and sign off. I appreciate all the good wishes coming through in the chat. That's lovely. And good wishes, best wishes to all of you all and your staffs. Thank you for everything that you do every day, helping folks that walk through the door. You all are amazing.